Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So this video takes place week 1 of 2022, which is January 3rd to January 9th. And we're going to start out at the back of the car. We're going to start putting some suspension back in, and we're going to start by putting those coilovers back in. As you can see, I got a toque on, so it's probably a little chilly in the shop. It doesn't get too cold here where I live in Victoria, so it's probably only, hovering around 0, maybe like -2 at worst. So it's really not bad conditions for working on the car. So as you can see, I got the driver's side in, and now I'm just working on the passenger side. I'm just getting these loosely put into place with the top bolt. I'm not doing the bottom bolt yet because I'm going to need to move around the axle in order to get those bottom bolts in. Looking at this now, thinking maybe a bottle jack would be nice for this. Just that way I don't have to go, I don't have to get out from under the car every time. I could, jack up the car or let it down just from right under the car. But might be something I'll look at later on. So that was pretty painless. We got both sides in. None of the suspension set up. That's just there just to kind of hold it in place. When I get a little bit further in the car, I'm gonna have to do look up some videos online and figure out how to do a base setup on the suspension. All right, it looks like we're about to do some engine work. Not entirely sure what we're doing, but let's figure this out. It looks like I'm gonna start by taking headers out, maybe. If I recall correctly, it's a 3/8 bolt for the headers. It came with the headers that I chose. Yeah, it's been a while since I actually edited the videos, so I'm doing the audio recordings probably a couple months, 2-3 months later, so I don't even remember what happens in this video, so we're going to go on this journey together. grabbing some parts off the shelf. Ah, QuickTime bell housing. Okay, so it looks like I'm gonna start doing some transmission work, and that's why I need to grab the QuickTime scatter shield off the shelf there. Here we are into the car. I've got just the one driver's side header on, and that's the plate that goes between the engine and the scatter shield. So that fit up there rather nicely. And we're gonna try and get that scatter shield on. Knock the plate, falls off of course. So put it back on and try and get that bell housing up into place. It looks like that actually went fairly easy. Yay. First time for everything, I guess. So right there, what I'm doing is I'm trying to install the mid plate and see if it's going to easily fit. And it doesn't look like it's going to easily fit. So we're going to have to do modifications on the mid plate in order to get that to fit. I'm trying to pull the scatter shield off without the backing plate falling as well. I'm not sure I accomplished that, but the dowel holes on the scatter shield are pretty tight, so I had a little trouble. So yeah, I'll just pull them both off, easy enough. So I think pulling the driver's side header off is just going to give me a lot more clearance, make it a lot easier to get the scatter shield on and off as much as I'm going to have to. As per usual, just pondering, trying to figure stuff out, figure out what my next steps are. You know, switching and putting the camera back on the tripod has its pros and cons. The cons is you don't always see what I'm doing in the shop, like where I go. But it is much easier for me to film, and I think it does give you a bit of a better viewpoint of the overall picture of what's happening. Looks like I'm getting the engine hoist set up. I may want to just take some of the weight off, or I may need to pull the engine forward. We'll see what happens. So right here we're just attaching the leveler to the engine at the front and the back. Right now I'm just looking around bolts for bolts to fit in the block in the front timing cover. So we're undoing the engine plate here now. Not sure why I'm doing this, but we'll see. Right, I'm flipping the leveler around so that the handle is in the front. That's what adjusts the angle when the engine's hanging, so I just want that in the front, not the back. When it's in the back, it's going to hit the cowl, I think. So as you can see, the jack stand at the driver's side front of the car here is actually moving when the engine hoist is hitting it, and that's because the car is so stiff that 3 jack stands will hold this. Look at that nice brand new Canton oil pan on there. Looks beautiful. So it looks like I'm just moving the engine forward, and I'm going to set it back down on the ground. Yeah, I don't like that in the front, that the board's not directly under the front of the oil pan. So that's why I'm moving the jack stands forward and kind of getting the weight directly on the jack stands. So it looks like I pulled it out just so I could do some test fitting in a nice open environment. And what we can see here is that the mid plate is actually not round enough to fit over the scatter shield. So right there you can see it's not fully sitting back up against the scatter shield like it should be. And that's because TeamZ never designed this plate to work with the scatter shield. They designed it to work with, you know, your regular bell housing. So as per usual, you know, at the end there, I was just trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And so now I think I got a plan, and we'll see how it unfolds. since I need some more room to work on this, I'm pulling the engine out from in front of the car and moving it over to the side where I'll be able to kind of walk around it and do what I need to do and not be very cramped between the front of the car and the garage door. If you look in the background, you can see this is one of the rare times that Victoria has snow. So we had snow for about 2 weeks. We got, I don't know, about a foot and a half, which is quite unusual for us. And that's the first race car that I ran in 2022. So I've got the engine in a pretty good spot. So what I'm going to do is start pulling the chains off. I don't need the engine hoist attached to the engine right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to label what goes towards the front of the engine, what goes to the back of the leveler, so that way when I install it next time I don't mess up again and put the front at the back and or the handle at the back. Yeah, I'm just hanging the scatter shield plate on the engine just so it's got a spot. I probably shouldn't have because it's pretty loose and pretty easy to fall. But it is what it is. And now you can see that we're getting out our favorite material and we're going to make up a template. Because the mid plate is smaller than the scatter shield, obviously I need to fab up a way to mark on the mid plate how I'm going to open it up and make it so it fits around the scatter shield. So as you can see on the cardboard, I marked it on the inside and then I marked it on the outside, and that gives me an idea of where I need to cut. I really have no idea where I'm going or what I'm doing, but I guess for some reason I decided to leave this pile of dead air in, so you get to watch nothing for a bit. Using a good old pocket knife, cut the outside, cut the inside, and get us our template. Yeah, so what I'm doing here is I'm just marking out all the bell housing bolts on the cardboard, and this will give me a really good idea as to where that template goes in relation to the mid plate. What this is a gasket punch set, so I'm just using this in order to pop the circles in the cardboard out. The rest was excess, that's why I cut it out. Don't need any of it. Now what I can do is I can take my template and put it down on the scatter shield and see if it fits. It didn't, so what I can do is I can just, you know, shave an 1/16 to an 1/8 off of my template until it fits. Just taking my time, doing a lot of trimming. It's easy to take off more, but you know, if I take out too much in one area, trying to add back is not really fun. So yeah, as you can see, just a lot of trimming, a lot of finicky work, and I think I just had the Sharpie out to say like add, which means like in that one corner I'm gonna want to add a little bit more material because I took too much off the template. So when I'm tracing it out onto the actual mid plate, you know, don't knock it down as much in this one area. Because on the template I knocked out all the holes in relation to where it sits on the scatter shield, it's very easy to line it up on this mid plate because all the holes line up. And especially around the starter on the far side there, you can really see how much material needs to come off. It looks like, you know, close to 1/4 inch all the way around. Alright, as you can see, I'm just tracing out the mark on the mid plate, and then I'm going to go and modify it. And looks like I'd forgotten about you for a second. What I'm doing here is I'm going to clean up the bench a little bit, but my bench grinder also has a little port on the bottom where I can actually attach the vacuum. So this way, while I'm grinding, it's going to suck some, not all of the metal shavings, but it's going to suck some of it right into the vacuum, and that way I don't have to clean the bench up later. Kind of a nice thing to have. Yeah, as you can kind of see, I've got the little Sharpie mark on the mid plate, and I'm just kind of running the plate on the bench grinder right up to that black line. So it looks like the initial trimming is done. I've got a ton of aluminum all over myself from trimming that, so just cleaning myself up. And I think we're going to go and give this a test fit, see how we did. So from that first look, it looks like we did horrible. It looks like there's a ton more trimming needed, so we're gonna do that. But you know what, at the end of the day, as I say, I can always take more material off. Putting it back on is just really time consuming and difficult. Yeah, so I think what I may have done is on the first pass, I just took material out up to the line, but I didn't actually remove the line itself, which in this case, removing the line would get me to exactly where the template is. So I think that's what I'm doing. I think I'm just removing the actual Sharpie line now. What I was doing there when I had the plate on its side and then I flipped it over onto its other side is just kind of deburring the edge and making it a little bit cleaner so it's not as sharp. We're much better, but we definitely need more around the starter hole still. So I'm just repeating the process you've already seen. I trim it a little bit, I go and I test fit it on the scatter shield, and then I come back and trim it a bit more. I didn't really feel the need to move the camera every time, considering you've already seen this process. Moving the camera means that I'm probably done trimming. As you can see, the middle plate fits right tight against the scatter shield now, and that's exactly what we need. Nice, I'm starting to use the actual hardware that came with that bell housing to hold the mid plate and the scatter shield on. I'm not putting the two top bolts on because I need those holes so I can lift the engine, but it's nice with the scatter shield and the mid plate in there. That's another piece of the puzzle done. And this just goes to show, you know, I bought that mid plate from TeamZ. It's supposed to fit, but when you're doing custom work, you have, you know, parts that don't necessarily start on the vehicle, like that bell housing. That's an aftermarket part. It's not gonna necessarily fit out of the box with other aftermarket parts. You know, look at running it with long tube headers. I had to modify both sides of the mid plate in order to fit the long tube headers there because the mid plate just wasn't designed for it out of the box. That's all part of doing custom work and building your own car, is, you know, running into these issues and then having to fix them. It's a good thing I'm doing all this test fitting with the engine outside the car. That way I know that everything will fit and will line up. I'm just going to need to put the header on as I'm dropping the engine into the car, because right now with the engine sitting in the car, I can't put the header on. There's just not enough clearance between all of the different components, so it has to go on as I'm installing it, which is going to be kind of a pain in the ass, but it's good to know now. It's also like the starter. Getting access to the starter with the header on is probably going to be pretty difficult, and I will likely have to have that on before I put the header on. So while I was test fitting, I noticed that the header was really tight to the mid plate, so I'm just going to have to do a bit more trimming in there. I marked it off and then I can trim it. Yeah, so you can see I've trimmed it there, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to use a hole saw in order to do the cuts. Fits now, we've got clearance, not touching. Beautiful. Alright, so what I'm doing here is, because I have the engine plate and the mid plate, I do not need those engine saddles, and so I'm just going to cut them off. I don't need them, I don't want them, they get in the way. Why keep them if they're not going to be used? So while I'm going through this, I'm doing my best not to dig into the base bar. I'm doing my best only to take off the material that I don't need. So I'm just gonna put some stuff away, do a little bit of cleanup. And that's where we're going to leave off for with this episode. I'd like to thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.